Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. Got a really special one for you today. My guests are Chrigel Maurer and Peter von Känel, who just completed, quite a bit ahead of schedule, their XPeaks challenge. Many of you, I'm sure, followed that on the social medias. I did every day. It was just amazing. But they set out from their hometown in Frutigen, on the north side of the Rhone Valley near Interlaken, and summited all 82 4,000 meter peaks in the Alps. And they did it with incredible style. Their style was to do all of this via foot or paraglider, and all of it connected. And so they were allowed to go home in periods of really bad weather, but only use public transport. And wherever they started that journey back home was where they would start when they came back to the project. In all, it took 51 days. They were only able to topland 9 of the peaks and only fly off 14. So there was quite a bit of mountaineering involved. And there's lots and lots of bad weather. And in the podcast, we get to hear some of their adventure. Obviously, it would take hours and hours and hours to hear all of it, but we heard about how the project was, how it became a dream, and how it was, how Peter kind of imagined it, and then reached out to Chrigel, his friend, and how they put it together over the last year in kind of preparation, both from the mountaineering side and the flying side. You hear about their gear, and the trials and tribulations, and the magic moves, and the scary times, and the food, the all-important food, and just a great story and a very legendary trip. This was quite inspiring and a lot of fun to watch from afar, and a lot more fun to hear kind of the more intimate side from these two. They were together in this, so we'll release this now as an audio podcast, as I always do, but I have the video as well, so at some point here we'll release the video portion as well, so you can see the two of them and all the smiling that went into this talk. So without further delay, please enjoy this talk with Chrigel and Peter about their XPeaks expedition in the Alps this summer. Cheers. Guys, Peter, Chrigel, thank you for taking the time to talk with us about your epic adventure, the XPeaks 82 summits. Chrigel, you and I had a chance to talk about this just before you set off at the World Cup in Interlaken and in Grindelwald, and you seemed less optimistic then that you would be able to get this done in this period of time, but you guys did it in less time than you originally thought. I was following very closely on the social media. What an epic adventure. It just looked amazing.
Yeah, thanks to you, Kevin, to speak about. And yeah, in preparation time, we was a bit unsure, especially about the snow conditions in the Alps this year. But when we start, we saw it's possible to do some peaks, and then we go step by step, and finally it was fast because we got really good weather especially in the end, and then it was good fun.
It was interesting. I was just out in Turkey last week for the World Cup, and everybody was talking about how bad the weather has been in Europe for flying this summer, this season. And I just read Tarquin's article that's not out yet, but he was kind enough to show that to me. It sounded like you had a lot of bad weather, but what was kind of interesting is that you were able to often be above the weather. In other words, above where we typically fly. You were above cloud base because you were so tall, and that allowed you to do things that maybe you hadn't anticipated.
Maybe you have to ask some of us to know who have to answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the weather was really special for us as a paraglider pilot because below the conditions was not too good to fly big distances in cross country. But above, to fly from peak to peak, it was often quite good, and it was not really too windy, and it was not too cloudy. We had no thunderstorms, so conditions was okay.
Peter, I understand this was your concept to begin with. How did this all come together? How did it happen in your mind?
Well, sometimes I ask myself, what can I do actually? What I am good at? And looking back on my life, there's not so much. It's like two things. I'm a good paragliding pilot and I'm a competent alpinist. So I tried to find some way to combine those two disciplines. And so first I started thinking a bit smaller. I aimed for the 48 peaks in Switzerland. And then I asked myself, what would be the maximum, the full blast of such a plan? And I came up with the 82 peaks. Next, I asked myself, what would be the most elegant way, the most adventurous way to do that project? And I thought, well, if we could do it autonomously, so without external support, and just carrying all the gear with us, this would be very cool. But I didn't have a clue whether this would be realistic at all. And so I dared to write a text to Chrigel and asked him if he would be interested in doing something like that this year. And I literally ran in open doors with Chrigel because he had similar thoughts about mountaineering and combining with paragliding. And so this was our starting point, and from there on, we just started defining cool rules for our project.
And Kriegel, when Peter reached out, you were still kind of in the throes of your Lyme disease issue this winter, as I understand. Was that still just I'll get over this, we'll make it work, this is something I have to do, or did you feel pretty positive that you would be healthy by then?
Yeah, the time he asked me, it was July 3rd, and it was just before I got sick. So I say yes before.
Okay.
And while I was sick, the planning for competitions was really difficult. So I canceled all the competitions in 2024, except the World Cup. And the project for me was a good motivation to at least get healthy and get ready, but not that much on the road as I normally train for. And it was a good combination, and for me the best way to recover.
Peter, you've got quite a history in paragliding. Obviously, no slouch. World Cups and championships. Yeah, a lot of history there. And then it sounds like you did a big switch to mountaineering in kind of the early 2000s or late 90s, as I understand. But reaching out to the best of the best, was it intimidating for you? Was it scary to uh, take on this project with the Eagle?
Well, we know each other for quite a long time, and honestly, I didn't think as far. I just asked myself with who I would like to do this project, and Crickle was about the first coming in my mind. So I didn't think much further and just asked him whether he would be interested. And for me, I also saw a big chance to get back into the paragliding business a lot, thanks to Krigel's support. So this was a slightly egoistic motive, maybe. And on the other hand, I knew that in alpinism, in climbing, it would be more on my side to manage this thing.
What kind of training went into this, if any, before the project started? You know, Kriegel, I know you and I discussed it at the World Cup, the decision on the wings, using the Theta instead of the Omega. But and we could talk about more about gear here. I really want to talk about clothing and cold and how you guys manage the various altitudes. But Peter, was there a lot of intense flying and training in that regard, or and were there training days before you actually set? I know you set out on a training day, and then that actually became the start of the expedition. But was there a lot of time spent together before the project started?
Definitely, yes. We did a lot of preparation. In 2023, Chrigel gave me his Alps Omega glider, and I experienced something like a second spring in paragliding of my life. Because the last 20 years, my paragliding was just doing hike and fly in tandem flights. So I really had to invest a lot to get back into thermal and cross country flying with a state of the art paraglider again. And I really did a lot of flying from summer 23 when we decided to go for the project until the start of the project. And I did a lot of takeoffs and landings in the alpine terrain. The only thing, looking back, I could have invested more was the strong wind taking off. There I did have indeed some weaknesses, and I was really glad for Chrigel to support me on those exposed high alpine takeoffs, because we did have quite a few times a lot of wind and challenging conditions, and this made me nervous. And well, so I was really dependent on Grigel's support. He held my glider and explained to me exactly in detail how to handle it. So yeah, this is about how I prepared myself for the paragliding part.
And Kriegel, did you also spend a lot of time working with Peter with glacial travel and rope team travel and things that maybe weren't in so much in your wheelhouse, or did you feel pretty prepared from that side of things?
No, first of all, we spend a lot of time in the gym, 2 to 3 weeks, 2 to 3 times in a week. We train in the gym and try to keep our body ready. And for sure, I was training climbing, and we did some training tours, but it was finally not so many as we wish because of the weather and snow conditions. I think it was three or four tours we did together, but I know a little bit how mountaineering works, so it was not completely new for sure. I just was not really experienced, so we had trainings that we got a good feeling, and especially we trained the combination with flying from home. I mean, hike and fly from home to the mountain, do a climb or a tour, and flying back. And already this experience was for us really interesting and beautiful. And we thought if we're not going to do the project to the end, for sure the preparation time was already good for us.
Tell me a little bit about the gear. It was obviously very alpine style, super lightweight. You weren't supported. You weren't putting in base camps. You weren't doing anything like that. Only using public transport. So I imagine weight was the big factor here, and then that always means you're less comfortable. Um, what was the? How were you deciding as you went along what came, what didn't?
Yeah, the goal for us was to leave our home by foot and then fly by paraglider from mountain to mountain and then do mountaineering to the peaks and back. And for that we decided for the advanced gear, the Theta and the weightless harness, light rescue, similar that I know from the X Alps. So already this was a compromise because the equipment it's 7 kilo and the backpack it's quite fragile. So mountaineering needs normally good heavy clothing, and we always have to be really careful with our equipment in the Alps. For climbing equipment, we got a lot of information from friends on which mountain we need how much safety gear and how long the rope have to be. But in the end, we was always with the minimalistic equipment on the way.
Yeah, I understand. For example, you cut the rope to a less, less than a standard rope because you don't really need to. You weren't planning on rappelling very much. You need it for ascending, and then hopefully you can fly off. In the end, did the gear equipment did it all? Obviously, it worked, but were there things where you would have we really should have changed this. This was made it too scary or too difficult.
Yeah, it's of course we knew from
You're both smiling.
we we knew from beginning that it would be a compromise regarding the alpine gear and the stuff we take for protection. And it is a bit like that. When you are in an actual difficult route, you would wish more protection. But on the other hand, you know that most of the time you carry all the gear in the rucksack and it's just ballast. So we did really think a lot. We spent days, and we had a lot of discussions with other people about what to bring and what not to bring to the mountain. And looking back, I think we found a very good compromise regarding our gear. So finally, we took 5 totems, rather small sizes. Those are camming devices for rock protection. I would have preferred 7 for some routes, but I knew that I could do with 5. Then 5 screw biners, 5 quick draws, and like 2 or 3 slings, and that was it more or less regarding technical gear. Light axes, light crampons. With the crampons, we did quite a lot of testing because we intended also to bring light shoes, and the combination between light shoes and light crampons might not ideally work in all circumstances. But we did not bring the lightest gear on the market. We just brought the gear that we thought would be suitable for our purpose. The lighter the better, but we didn't pick the lightest gear available. We just picked the gear we were convinced that it would work. And regarding rope, we decided to go with the 40 meters opera rope. This is the lightest single rope on the market. And in addition, we brought a so-called escaper for upseiling. You can upseil the whole 40 meters and pull down the rope after upseiling. And after the difficult peaks, we cut the rope back to 30 meters. So we knew that this would involve a lot of down climbing then, because the rope would be too short for both to upseil. And finally, this worked quite well.
So what was the total weight of each of your packs approximately? And I mean, I know that changed. You started off on skis. That changed, so we could talk about that. But what was the average?
The backpack finally was between, I would say, 14 and 16 kilo. Depends of how much food. We also bring some snowshoes, carbon plates. And with the full wood, water and food, it was until 16, I would say.
Up to 16, yes.
So I really look forward for the Alps next year, because the backpack then will be maximum 8 kilo.
It'd be nothing.
It's nothing,
Just
yeah.
a feather.
But what we saw is that the light backpack for paraglider was working for, I would say, 14 kilo. It was okay, but for 16 it starts to be really uncomfortable for the long hikes. And for the Alps, less than 10 kilo, it's perfect now.
I think I glossed over. I was so excited. We haven't really talked about the actual mission. Did you just summarize what you set off to do, and in the time that you had, and the style?
Yeah, I can try to summarize our mission. Looking back, we do not need a lot of words to explain it. We basically wanted to link all the 82 4,000 meter peaks of the Alps with a continuous track. And we just moved on foot or by paraglider. And in order to handle bad weather, we decided to allow the possibility to go back from a village, for example. We can land somewhere in a valley and travel back home and go to the exact same place to pick up the project and to keep a continuous track. And we decided that in our view this does not reduce the value of the project, because if we do it, we waste precious days when we stay at home. But finally, this really paid off a lot, because we did have bad weather, real bad weather, with huge storms that destroyed the infrastructure in the villages we were. And looking back, this was quite a good and useful strategy. And it still allowed us to experience a pure adventure.
And the start is, and the end is obvious. It's your home. It's in Frutigen. But how did you decide on the link? Was that more logistics? It just makes sense to kind of go in a certain circle, or was it way more driven by weather and spontaneity?
Initially, we wanted to start in the Mont Blanc area because there is a non-flying zone for paragliders during July and August. So always during summertime, you're not allowed to fly in the Mont Blanc area. So we wanted to go on June, that we would have the option to fly. This was the original plan. And then we did have to adapt according to the conditions and the weather. And we postponed the trip to Mont Blanc area, and we decided to start with the skis and with very basic harness for flying, that we can carry the skis. And so looking back, we did change our plans very often, even several times during a day. Usually we changed the plans, we adapted. Whenever we had time, we checked the weather and the weather forecast, and we continuously thought about what would be the most efficient to do. So we were really driven by the conditions, and the whole planning didn't work as expected.
I gather from both of your smiles that ended up being maybe part of the fun. Was that things didn't work out? Was that a you're both really smiling. It was either really funny or a real pain in the ass.
No, it was big fun. This was what I was looking for, actually. I was not looking for to do all the 82 peaks, not in first order. My goal was to experience an adventure. And my goal was to improvise and to adapt to the conditions. And this was what we were actually looking for. And looking back, I think we can state that the best moves we did when we had the knife on our throat. For example, when we wanted to do 2 days of mountaineering from Sambiwi, and we realized that we would only have one day with good weather, and the other day the weather would turn bad. This forced us to do quite creative moves, magic moves, as we call them, at least when they work. And those were the funniest and most interesting moments in this project.
Chrigel, one of the things I learned going into the 2015 race beforehand, I sat down with Tom Payne, and he said the most important thing for your team is to have some way to resolve conflict. Things are going to happen that you don't anticipate, mistakes, whatever, and you need to have a way to move forward? And we just decided on our team that, okay, we would do it with humor. We would laugh. We would, okay, this is a mistake. That's funny. Let's move on. And it for me, it worked really well. But how did you two decide to, I know there's a lot of weight on decisions in these kinds of projects. Let's take this route. Let's summit this peak. No, let's go this way. How did you two decide on who would make the decision? And if it was the wrong decision, how did you move forward?
Yeah, I know this from the team races as well, but in general, we was really lucky that Peter is the expert in mountaineering, and I'm a bit more in flying, and so there was the focus set, but we was also free to ask the other if some other thoughts are around. So we had always conversations during the day and for taking the next decisions. And interesting was that while walking and climbing, we was able to stop and to have discussions about next steps. While flying, it's an unstoppable thing. So in before a flight, we had to discuss really good and exact what we do and how we do. We was able to talk by phone in the air, but it was not always easy. So we know before the project that we will do mistakes, and if we make mistakes, that we have to move on. And finally we say that nobody of us do mistakes because he is not happy, for example, and then mistakes can happen. So we have to watch above and go ahead. And finally I think we was lucky that we was working together really well all the 50 days, and we never had stress, or maybe we had some, but we not speak about. And we was always motivated when we came back in a hut in the evening and we had food, and after a sleep, we was motivated again. So there was never a problem. And I think it depends with which person you do a competition or a project like this, and sometimes it works better, sometimes less. And finally, we was lucky that it was really well.
I could relate to. There were many pictures and stories as you guys went along about food. There were lots of big smiles, and this was the biggest surprise. I could relate to that a lot with the Alaska expedition. We spent a lot of time on that trip starving. Tell me about the food and the weight loss. I read in Tarquin's article you both had quite a bit of weight loss, at least early.
And for me, I really like to eat a lot, and I not lost so many kilos. But for Peter, it was a challenge. He lost in the first 10 days more or less 7 kilo, and I tried to explain him how to eat a lot and how to eat fast and how to eat calories, and until the end he had good practice. But tell more about it.
Yeah, we realized at one point that we do not eat enough. When you get a good breakfast and you move for like 12 hours and you get a good dinner, it's just not enough to compensate for the loss of calories. So whenever we had the possibility, we went shopping. When we have been in a valley, for instance, we went shopping in a supermarket, and we got a very nice food like Pringles and mayonnaise and cheese and ham and stuff like that. And there was always some time for when we waited for thermals, for instance, and we tended to use this time to fuel up again. And from this time on, we managed to keep our body weight.
Yeah, you need fat.
Yeah, finally.
lots and lots of fat.
Finally, this is a bit different when I do a race and with support. The support can bring every time bars and gels, and also the drink. I do a lot of carbohydrates in the water, so I got always a good energy. And in mountaineering, it's not possible to bring everything with us. So we was focused on the huts and the normal shops in the valleys, and to organize the food already takes time. For example, in a restaurant, you always have to wait until the food is on table, and sometimes we was really hungry, and in the end, it's part of the project to manage all days with the food, with the speed you take, and with the difficulties. And for us, it was clear that we have this problem, and we was watching out, and finally, in the end it was okay, but at the beginning it was a bit, we lost weight, and this was, okay.
We did have to find the good rhythm, not only with food, but also with recovery. And we did have hard and long days, but you cannot do one and hard long day after the other. At one point, you just cannot do it anymore. So we did invest quite a lot in resting and eating and recovering and keeping up the good mood and memory. I'm also convinced that we do the better decisions when we are not too tired. I think that's a very important point. So we were very careful with our resources and with our energy, because that was another basic concept. We did not want to do the project with brute force, but we were always looking to do it in an elegant way. And I think thinking is the key for moving elegantly. It's much more than just, going for very tough and long and hard tours. We did have our share with tough mountaineering and long days, also with a lot of hiking, but there was always a purpose. We knew that we have to go further in order to get to a good spot for the next day to keep going, for instance. But whenever we did have the opportunity, we tried to stay lazy and to save energy. Looking back, I think this was one of the key factors of the success of our project.
I love this word, elegant. The other one that seems to pop up is fun. You had this rule of one of you had to be having fun. Is that so? Do I have that right?
I have to tell you that in flying, often it's me that have fun, because Peter was a bit stressed when it was rough. So, but on the other side, on the ridge, on the mountain, it was me. They was stressed often, but on the end, I think it was Grand Choras, that was the hardest ridge we climbed, and we found out that if at least one of the team is comfortable and have fun, it's enough. So he can push the other. But sometimes it was switching often in the day. But as long one of the team is ready and the fun is there, then it's okay. When we was really hungry, or when it was raining, or when we had to walk on the road, and both of us was not not really funny, and then we had to do a break and to eat something.
I think it tells something about us as a team. We have decided, or we have learned very early in our preparation, that we have to take back our egos and to put the team in first place. So, and as long as one has fun and the other is out of his comfort zone, the one having fun can still support the other, and he can still check for safety and for possible dangers and so on. I think it also has to do with the safety concept we did have. And we did discuss a lot about the things in the beginning. And I was aware from the very beginning, for example, that Chrigel is the best pilot in the world. So it's not me by definition. And when for Chrigel, something just still works in very rough conditions, for instance, I need to think for myself if it still works for me too. So it has to do a lot with self-responsibility. And I knew that it's a realistic scenario that Chrigel turns up, for instance, and I have to chicken out because the thermal is too strong, or I cannot properly center the thermal and just bail out and have to go landing, and Chrigel has to come down to me. This was a scenario we have discussed from beginning on, and we decided to not apologize on the other. So when I do a mistake, or when I just don't have the level to cope with flying conditions and I have to bail out and go landing, and Chrigel has to come to me, and we cannot do the planned magic move, for instance, then this is not a reason to apologize, because I gave my best, and it was just not enough. And it's just a fact that the team is only as good as the weaker one. So we carried each other, and we helped and supported each other for supporting the team and to do the moves. So this was something that also removed a lot of pressure from me. I knew that it's okay when I have to chicken out for good reason because I'm scared or something. And this took a lot of pressure from me, and it opened the possibility for me to not do a move and to take a safe decision, for example, and not to push it too hard.
Chrigel, did you find that having to be in charge in a sense for the flying side for Peter, did it change how you approached flying? Were there times where, for example, maybe you would have flown if it was just you, but because Peter was there, I don't think we should do this? Or did you just talk about that a bit? Was there, I would imagine there was some weight on you in terms of the safety aspect. In both those instances, from the flying instance with you and also from the mountaineering from Peter.
Yeah. For us, it was clear that on the mountain we are on the rope, so we can help each other directly, and in the air, everyone have to fly by self. And this is a big difference. But in the air, I was able to push in a direction and try to do something, and Peter was watching from behind, and if it works, he can follow. If not, I come back maybe, or we try another direction. So I was always a bit trying to get the solution for the next crossing. And when we think about landing or top landing, often we was close together to speak to each other, to have a solution, or to make the decision together. Because on the glacier, we always landed together to walk together on the rope. And especially on the takeoff, we had time to think about solutions and talking about the risk. And then, I was also able to help when it was windy, for example. So we managed it really together. But for me, it was not the big pressure to fly in front. But I realized that it's a big difference to a competition like the Red Bull X Alps when I fly alone. And often it was difficult to fly together, to wait to each other. Sometimes I bomb out and Peter continue, and I try to catch up. And sometimes, we landed together to have the safety on the glacier, for example.
Peter, just speaking from how I would personally feel about it, if I had an opportunity to do what you did and spend so much intimate time with Chrigel in the mountains, in the big mountains, and doing what he does best, I imagine it's two things. On the one hand, it's just an incredible learning opportunity that you must be very grateful for, but also quite intimidating. Just talk about that.
Actually, I did not think about this too much this way. Chrigel is Chrigel is more like a friend and not my idol or something. We are just partners in a project, and it's just a fact that he's a very good and competent pilot. But I I think it does. It did not influence me very very strongly, or it did not intimidate me in any way. It was just like, well, useful to have such a competent partner in flying. And I used to do a lot of paragliding myself many years ago, and this helped me to handle rough conditions, for example. And in regular conditions, we were more like flying together. And when the conditions really got harsh, I ran out of resource to, besides controlling the glider, to do elaborate tactical decisions, for example. And then I was really happy just to follow Chrigel, and I tried to position myself a little bit higher and a little bit behind, so I could see how Chrigel does in when we flew through a big lee or through some wash machine. And I could, it helped me a lot to observe and just to follow him. But this was really only in very harsh conditions, and with regular flying conditions, we just flew together and had fun.
Kriegel, briefly tell me about the decision of the wing. I understand that was something, especially at the end. You were both very grateful you made that decision. We talked a little bit about it in Switzerland, you and I, but that was interesting.
Yes, finally I know from the races that in a PWC, for example, you need full performance, and the flying time and the resources, it's not that high, so it's easier to control a difficult wing. In the adventure races like the Alps, you push more in every condition. The days are long, and every day you have to compete. So it makes sense to have an easier wing, a light glider to carry for sure. And I realized for the high alpinism flying, it's even more important to have an easy wing. And because it was a project and not a competition, we also had no pressure to have or to bring high performance. And finally we was a lot comparing the gliders. I mean the Omega and the Theta, and we realized that the biggest difference is the top speed. It's less from the easier wing for sure, but the performance it's really similar. And the easiness and the controlling, it's much more a benefit for the takeoff and the landings in the high mountains. And on the end we saw that we often had, or we daily had, takeoffs and landings which was really difficult, and it helps us with the easier glider, and the performance was good enough to cover big distances, and we had not hard wind conditions that we flew backwards, so the top speed was in the end not really a problem. And we often flew full speed, so 50 is a good speed to cover big distances, and in the end it was the perfect gear.
Peter, the first day, which was not the first day, you told the journalist to not come with you. It seemed to really set the tone. Tell me about that first day, and it seemed like that was what a surprise. Let's keep going. But tell us about the first day.
When I got up in the morning, it was still raining a little bit. The cloud base was really deep, really low, and I was honestly quite pessimistic. But we knew that the weather would improve during the day, but I didn't expect. Well, from Frutigen, it's quite a distance to get the first 4,000er in sight. It's not that you can just turn up once or twice and you are on your first 4,000er. You have to do a cross-country flight to get in the area. And in my view, the chance was really small this first day to manage somehow to get in a region with 4,000ers, especially also with the simple harness and the skis. The performance of the glider is a bit reduced. So you have to take this into consideration also. And The journalist, this was a bit unlucky, but it set the tone of the project. And I think for us, it was a super fun project with a lot of uncertainties and a lot of taking decisions. But for the people surrounding us, it was very difficult. It was nearly impossible to catch up with us. So we went up in the afternoon above Frutigen, and we took off with a quite low cloud base. And the thermals were weak, and it really didn't look well for this first day. And finally, we managed to fly to the end of the Kandertal and go further direction Lurchenpass and land there and walk up. And I still thought, well, okay, we do a glide down to the train station and go home, most probably. And then Chrigel proposed to take off in the Louvre. It was quite cloudy and the cloud base was low, and we were already like 1,000 meters above the cloud base, but it was scattered, so no real compact mass of clouds. You always saw down in the valley, and we had wind, and we took off, and in a miraculous way, which I still don't completely understand, we managed to get over the Hockenhorn on roughly 3,500 meters, and suddenly we were really like 1,800 meters above the cloud base, soaring up.
Wow.
And we saw that in Lurchental the conditions would be much better with a cloud base of around 3,800 meters. And then it was clear to both of us that we would start the project and go for it.
Wow, that must have been really special. I think that's personal to you as well, Kriegel, because that's where you came over the pass to fly into Frutigen in last year's race. It's the same zone, yeah?
Yeah, it's the same. It was turn point in Frutigen, and we flew the opposite way, and I remember well the area. But our plan for this day was to fly direction Grindelwald, and then climbing direction Mönch from the north, and on the afternoon when we was flying a little bit in Frutigen, I realized that it's no chance to fly to Grindelwald, but the chance can be big to fly towards Lurchenpass and climb a little bit to fly over the Lurchenpass direction Aletschhorn. And this is exactly the interesting part of the project, that you have to start to see how it works. Without starting, just with the weather forecast and the map, you not see the solution. So you never got a solution to continue. And while making a first step, you see where you can do the second. And then if you do this a day, you are on the mountain finally.
What were you using for forecasting other than your eyeballs?
We used only the mobile phone and with different apps, but it's BirdNet app and some others where we can see the forecast for the thermals. We used Meteo Swiss app for wind and cloud and rain forecast. But for us, it was really difficult to work with them at all in general, because the weather forecast change or the calculation, it's every 3 hour new, and it changed really a lot. So to make a good plan with the forecast was almost impossible, or only on the good days. In the bad days, when it was raining or cloudy, it was really difficult to find the best window to move. And on the end, we made different plans for different weather. So doesn't matter how the weather will be, we had a good solution.
Peter, what was the most elegant day of the expedition?
We had quite a few, actually. So the first day was really, it blew my mind. I barely couldn't believe it, that being on 3,800 meters, starting below a cloud base of about 17 to 1,800 meters. So this was really something very special to me. And this blew my mind quite a lot. And there were quite a few more moves like that. And to me, yeah, I can tell like half a dozen. I just need to choose one. I just pick
Yeah,
one
go
of
for
them.
it. Go for it. It's a podcast. The longer, the better. Anything that stands out. Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, really. One that was really standing up out for me was the one in the Mont Blanc area when we went for the south summit of the Mont Blanc area. We took off above Morges after eating a lot, by the way, and we had a beautiful flight on the Italian side of the Mont Blanc area. We could thermal up to a bit more than 4,000 meters and cruise around. And we passed in front of the Aiguille Noire de Botterêts. And I know all those summits there very well from mountaineering, so a lot of memories popped up. And finally, we managed to land on the Col de Botterêts. This was like a dream. We did discuss this scenario, but I rather mentioned this as a joke. So I was not really serious when I proposed to go landing on the Col de Botterêts. And I thought, well, this would most probably be like a dream, but it's always good to dream big. And as Chrigel said before, it's good to work in scenarios and to be prepared for different scenarios and to stay flexible and take what you can get. And finally, we really managed to land on the Col de Botterêts with ideal conditions like 15 kilometers per hour updraft. And we put the gliders and we climbed the Aiguille Blanche de Botterêts. And I think 2 hours or something later, we were airborne again. And normally to climb the Aiguille Blanche de Botterêts, it's like a 3-day project of mountaineering.
Wow.
And we just went up. We just took the summit. We took off again and we flew to the Eckel bivouac. And we landed and we really celebrated the nice day, but suddenly we realized that we would only have another day of good weather, and the next day, the day after, the weather would turn bad. So I think it's also a bit the emotions that goes like a roller coaster. The emotions go high up, and then you realize, oh shit, we only have one more day and we need 2 days for our mountaineering that we have planned. So the emotions go down again, like in the cellar. And we discussed a lot about how to handle the situation. We knew that we only have food for 2 days and gas for 2 days. That's what we took with us because we were really limited in the amount of weight we carry. And we were really surprised to see that the day after the weather would turn bad. And bad weather in the south peaks of Mont Blanc area is not really the good thing to do mountaineering. If there is a place in the Swiss Alps you don't want to be with bad weather, it's this area. So at 10 in the evening, we had a plan, a rough plan. We decided to leave the gliders in the bivouac and to climb the Brouillard Ridge. And from the Pointe Louis Amédée, there's a first decision point. You can follow the ridge to the Mont Blanc de Courmayeur. And the dream would have been, or the top plan would have been to down climb from Mont Blanc de Courmayeur to Grand Pillet d'Angle and to go back to Col de Botterêts and return to the Bibi. So at midnight, we went up and at 12:30 or something, we started and we really had a flow like I didn't have often before. We had super light backpacks. We only brought some food and some clothes and the technical gear. And then we just really went for it. And we climbed the Brouillard Ridge. And the conditions were not easy everywhere, but manageable. And so we were on the Pointe Louis Amédée around sunrise, which was quite good. And we managed to climb to the Mont Blanc de Courmayeur in quite a short period of time. And so we were still good to down climb to Grand Pied d'Angle and to return to the Bibi. And so we did, in a 12-hour trip, we did 2 long days of mountaineering. But we didn't have time to celebrate in the Bibi because the cloud base was descending and we had to hurry to take off near the Bibi and to fly out in between the clouds to the Valveni. And then we went via Golfere to Bourg Saint-Pierre. It's in Switzerland again. We chose this location tactically because we traveled back from there by public transportation, and it was an ideal spot to pick up again the adventure, because we realized that the bad weather would last for more than 1 day. So we just finished this tour. So this was a double magic move in my view. The first day we had an excellent flight, amazing flight up to Col de Pöttere that allowed us to go very easily to Aiguille Blanche de Pöttere. And the next day we had an exploit in mountaineering, and the flow, I think it's mainly the flow we felt during this tour. Everything just worked and we were in excellent shape. And this is really a memory to last forever for me.
Chrigel, do you have a memory, maybe a flying memory that will stick with you from the project?
Yeah, finally, we know that these 3 peaks, which is quite difficult to reach because they're far away. This is Gran Paradiso in Italy, and then Bar de Secra in the south, and Piz Bernina in the east, in Engadin. And we know that we need flyable conditions. And we made Gran Paradiso in a bad weather period, because in Gran Paradiso it's not allowed to fly anyway. So we walked the road in bad weather. That was okay. And then Bar de Secra we flew in some days and back to the Swiss Alps. And then in the end we know that we have to do the Bernina. And we saw that when it was finished with the mountain, with the summits in Zermatt in Swiss Alps, we will have flyable conditions for the east. And then it was Friday, and we was in Andermatt, far away from Bernina. It was 95 kilometers in the morning. And the forecast, they say, the cloud base will increase in Engadin to 4,000 meters in the afternoon between 4 and 5. So I was calculating a little bit, 100 kilometers with an average speed of 20. It needs 5 hours. And for these 100 kilometers, and we took off at 11, and it was just possible to fly well. And when we saw the Bernina from far, we saw that it's the peak is in cloud, and it's not possible to top land. And we was coming closer and closer, and then it was exactly 4 o'clock, and the cloud base was really increasing, and we was top landing just behind the peak, the summit, on a glacier. But where we know, a friend of mine was sending me message that he will take off in the morning with a tandem with his client, and it was brilliant. It was 15 minutes hike or climbing from the landing field to the summit, and 10 minutes back. So 30 minutes after landing, we took off again and flew back and direction home. And it was unbelievable. After a 5-hour flight, we top land on 3,950 meters and had a 15 minutes walk, an easy walk to the Piz Bernina, which is normally a serious mountaineering day. And then the day was not over. We flew another 3 hours back to Chur, to Flims, which was a perfect place for climbing the next day to fly back to home. And it was unbelievable that we felt to be on the right time, on the right place, because the forecast showed us in the morning that it will be possible to fly high, but late in the afternoon. And after 5, the cloud base will drop down, and we will not have the possibility to top land high. And after 100 kilometers of flying, we just was on the place to land at 4, and this was unbelievable.
How about maybe the opposite of elegant? Well, sometimes scary can be elegant too. Any really scary situations that will maybe left a mark for either of you?
Yeah, maybe I can tell something from my flying that really scared me. We landed on Bar des Écrins in the Lee, also just below the summit. And there's a relatively flat piece of glacier where you can easily top land in the Lee. And the landing went very well, and we climbed the 2 summits in a relatively short time. And we were aware that we are in the Lee but we thought it's manageable. We had gusts of maybe 70 kilometers per hour when we climbed the summit. So we thought, okay, this should be manageable. And I took off, and I really had a hard time. I flew 2 kilometers, and I lost 900 meters in those 2 kilometers. And I had a few real serious collapses. So my main job during those 2 kilometers of flying was to keep open the glider, or to keep the glider flying and to recover the big collapses. And by the way, in this opportunity, I was really happy to fly the Theta and not the Omega as usual. And so I had to go down and land on a flat glacier underneath. And Chrigel, he also took off a bit later, and he found a little bit of a better line, and he would have had managed to fly over the glacier plateau, but he spiraled down and landed on my spot. And then we walked a few hundred meters. We took the gliders in the hand. We walked a few hundred meters where the glacier gets steep again, and we took off again. And it was the same shit. We were still in this lee wind, and we had strong sinking and very rough flying conditions. And I saw the camping on the foot of the Bar des Écrins closer than I would have liked. But finally we managed, we caught a very strong and bit brutal thermal that carried us up again on 4,000 meters. And this was really a bit of limit flying for me.
Yeah, for me as well.
Yeah.
Finally, but it was it was on the snow, and it was really efficient. And as soon as we was back up on the base, it was manageable well to fly back north to Mont Blanc.
Yes, and we did a long flight back. We covered a lot of distance, and we finally landed not far from Petit Saint-Bernard. And I think it's a skill to manage fearsome situations and to still perform afterwards, and to get back in the right mental state to perform and to handle all of it. But I was a bit shaky after the flight, honestly. During the flight, I managed well, but after the flight, I was really impressed by this violent turbulences we have experienced after taking off from Bar des Écrins.
Chrigel, you and I have spoken in past shows, and also just personally, how difficult it can be to accomplish projects like this. It's wonderful to accomplish them. There's a real sense of pride and confidence and excitement, but it's also you're living a very wonderful experience and life for a period of time, and then suddenly it's done. You finished the project. It's over. You and Peter don't get to spend that intimate time together because life. Where are you both now mentally? What do you how do you end something like this? Maybe in an elegant way.
Yeah, finally we was back earlier than we thought, And I was lucky to spend some days holiday with my boys, with my kids. I was happy to make some mountaineering with my girlfriend and make some tandem flights with clients. So back in life, it's good to have challenges as well. Also, I do some training for the next competitions, like Dolomitenman, and finally we got a lot of pictures, and we celebrated myself almost every day to watch a picture, check the video we did, and we plan to do some presentations, and yeah, it's all day a lot to do.
So you just stay busy.
Not really super busy. It's nice to complete a project like this and to celebrate it, but to have daily challenges and work, it's good to have, and especially my family, it's here, and yeah, for me it's going on. I got some experience 10 years ago with the Alps. After the arriving Monaco, I was really unmotivated, and I thought now life is over. But during the last 10 years, I was always focusing on next steps after a project. So this time it was not the problem.
I am still doing a lot of thinking because during the project I didn't have enough time to digest what I've just experienced. So I had postponed this stuff, and I took notes on my phone. I wrote like a diary, and coming home, I dived deep into those notes, and I am writing a book about this experience. And this allows me to digest the whole thing and to relive the situations together with the pictures. This is a great way I found for me to get along with this experience. And I enjoy a lot all the pleasures we did not have, like going down to the fridge and eat something, just stuff like that. So I get along well, I would say. Very happy, very proud of what we did. And to me, this is definitely a dream came true, a lifetime dream, and something of the biggest I was allowed to experience. And this is really, I'm very grateful for this experience. This is to last forever for me. One thing maybe that is important to me is the risk management part of it. We did a lot of discussion about risk management, and we did not go all in our project. I think that's important. We defined from the very beginning that we would take rescue, we would put on the rope in the high mountains, that we would choose simple forgiving glider, and that we would just work properly. So we really wanted to experience a great adventure while keeping the risk on a reasonable level that is fine for the two of us. And we did also regularly discuss in the evenings whether we had the risk under control or not, or if we pushed too far, and what to change in the future. And I think this was, in my view, this was a real good style, and that appealed a lot to me. So we did not dare too much. We took risks, of course, and it was dangerous from time to time, but we did not go all in. We always had a certain amount of reserve.
What was the post view or the talk after the flight you discussed from the Ekrans when it was really, really rowdy? Was that deemed afterwards? Would you have done that again?
We underestimated the turbulence. We felt the wind on the ridge, and we both thought it's easily manageable. It will be rough to fly out, but we before the project, we flew in rough conditions also, and we were really confident that it would be rough flying, but okay. But when I flew out and when I got hit by the wash machine, I was really surprised. So it was not it was a inaccurate judgment of what we expected regarding turbulence, and this can happen. And we still had some reserve, but not much anymore. I could still fly the glider, I could still control the glider, I just didn't feel comfortable anymore. But so the margin was just reduced, but we did still have margin in this situation. We got close to the upper limit of risk, but we did not get into the red area, for example. Maybe I can give you another example. Monte Rosa. When we started from Monte Rosa hut, we knew that the weather would turn bad this day, and our plan was to climb 4 of the highest mountains of the Alps. But we just kept going, and we just checked the risk permanently during the whole day. And when the storm hit us, we decided to keep going carefully and just to continuously check what we are doing. But we were fully aware, for instance, that no rescue would come for us if we would get a problem. And those moments are very intense, but you can really handle them. You start moving very carefully, and you start feeling very much alive in these moments also. And you really need to think what you're doing, and you know that you don't have so much margin anymore, but on the other hand, you know what you're able to do, what you're capable of doing, and then you can bring it home.
Chrigel, were there times during the expedition, especially when it sounds like you had a lot of flying kind of above where we normally fly. You're above the cloud base. You had so many videos and pictures of flying well above the clouds. I imagine it would have been hard to think that you weren't building some amazing tools for future races. Was that going through your mind that, wow, this is a great way? I mean, obviously it's physical training. It's obviously being in the mountains, but I imagine also some fantastic training for what you do as an athlete.
Really difficult to say, because we was focused to fly from mountain to mountain and sometimes to connect different summits, and it was not the really efficient flying style like I do in a race. So it was differently, and mostly it was also the question about do we have an option to take off or not on the summit? Do we bring the glider on summit or not, and climbing with the summit or not? And yeah, it's really difficult to say what it brings, but it was a new experience. It was a new challenge, and we saw many different things, and to play with this, I mean, with the forecast, with the conditions we find, with the takeoff and landing fields we have to manage ourselves, and to respect the nature and the conditions. It was just unbelievable, and I think we was learning a lot about this, to manage ourselves and to make something extreme as safe as possible.
Peter, do you think this experience has it ignited more passion for future flying projects? Do you see yourself being more focused on flying than you have been in the last 20 years, or still more focused on mountaineering?
I definitely started loving flying again. I really missed it during the last 20 years when I focused on mountaineering. And indeed, I love flying. I went flying today, for example. And I really love flying also with the new gear and with the new knowledge I gathered during this project. I'm really motivated also to learn new things. I saw quite a few weak spots in my skills that I want to work on, that I can improve. And this is really a nice thing and a nice perspective to me to focus more on flying. And I think there's a lot of potential in the combination between alpinism and flying. We are more on the beginning of this, and we will see much more. I'm really convinced about that. Also, one real important point I have learned during this project, this is playing with uncertainty. And I learned that we did our best moves when it got difficult. So use the difficulty. I think this is more than just a phrase. It really becomes a lifestyle for me more and more. And whenever I run into a difficulty, I see a chance in proving myself that I can do something out of it. It's always a big chance to do some move or some unexpected, something unexpected. It's really fascinating to me to see where it leads when you let in the uncertainty and you start playing with it and you bear the uncertainty and you just go and you see where this path leads.
There's two sayings that come to mind. One is remove the challenge, remove the man. And then the other is it's not an adventure until something goes wrong. Yeah, I like that. It seemed that you both really embraced the uncertainty, and that was where the magic happens, is that line between certainty and uncertainty. Is the more you push into the unknown, the more special it gets.
And what another interesting thing I have observed is the intuition. Sometimes we took decisions without discussing, but it was just clear to the two of us. It was really interesting. It was a little bit like magic, but we didn't have to discuss certain things. Sometimes we just saw a possibility for a magic move, and without doing a lot of discussion, it was clear to both of us that we give it a try. And seeking for those unexpected chances, those doors that suddenly open somewhere and provide you with a huge advantage of what you're doing. This is really like magic in my view, and this is what we were finally really looking for, and those caused us some of the best moments of our project.
In the Alaska project, deciding on going to a launch or just walking was a really it was a monumental decision, because the terrain when we were on the south side of the range was really quite brutal. It required crawling and getting through just thickets of alder, and it was really, so, and it would take hours. It was really, and if you made the wrong decision, there was a lot of weight, and we had the rule, there was never any blame, but we often didn't agree. If it was my decision, let's try to go or let's not try to go. And there was so much weight on it. And as the project went along, we became more intuitive or more in the flow, and wow, it gets so much better, when you're not, you're not thinking too much. When you're thinking too much, you can really get bogged down in thinking too much.
I think it also depends a lot on on the goal or on the focus you have. When you focus on achieving a goal, I think it blocks you. It does not help to stay to stay relaxed and to do the good moves. But we quite a few times we discussed about scenarios, about best case scenarios that were probably not very realistic, and we decided to go for a try, to give it a try. And we were not forced to bring the bacon home. We were not, there was no pressure to succeed, but we knew when we do it, we will have, it's guaranteed that we will have a great adventure. So the success was unsure, but the adventure was almost sure all the time. And this was what we were looking for. We were really looking for the good moves and for the adventures. And not achieving the goal was not a problem, or bailing out when the conditions were really too harsh. This was not like losing to us. It was more like an interesting experience, and it's something we can be proud of because we managed the situation properly and it did a proper risk check.
So the 82 peaks, that's just a bonus. You don't stay focused on that. You stay focused on the next step.
I think we can state that. And this paved the way to our success, finally, looking back.
We just we planned this 72 days holidays for us in the summer. And we had the 82 summits as a goal. And we want to see how far we can go and have the adventure and have the challenge every day. And finally we was back 20 days too early, and we say it's good to end or to finish the project, but it's also bad to be back too early.
Because you're having so much fun. Love it. Perfect place to end. Thank you both for dreaming big and bringing this project to all of us. You guys are great, and I know you're busy, so I appreciate your time, and so do the listeners. They're going to be thrilled. Nobody knows this is coming out. Nobody knows I'm doing this with you except Tarquin. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening, and thanks for sharing your time.
Same to you.
If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind-the-scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So, for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But You'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.